Hello and welcome to Running for the Bus, presented by BKDMC, supported by Runna and hosted by me, Ben Kelleher. Joining me today is the race director of the TCS Sydney Marathon, Wayne Larden. We'll be discussing Wayne's own running journey, making Sydney an Abbott World Marathon major, and his plans for the future. Wayne, thank you for coming on. How are you?
You're welcome. Good to be here, Ben. I'm good now. Week and a bit after our big day or big week.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
feeling pretty good about things now, which is good.
That's so good to hear. I'm sure you're exhausted probably after such a busy period, and so we're recording this literally a week after the TCS Sydney Marathon. And have you sort of had a bit of time to catch your breath after that?
Yeah, I mean, post race is usually pretty busy. Fair bit of work, packing things up and
Of course.
gathering information and all that sort of stuff. But the team mostly does that. So I've had a few meetings
Sure.
and whatnot, waiting for data to come in. So it's sort of a good time for me to decompress.
Yeah.
So it took a few days though.
Yeah, I bet. I was sort of seeing as well that you're out, getting out early and starting the day super early, and barely sleeping. I imagine drinking lots of coffee and stuff to keep you going when it's like that for
Yeah,
sure. But
yeah,
but also I've just seen that you've just announced today the race date for next year, so that's pretty exciting as well. Like no rest for the wicked. You're straight back into it.
yeah. That's right. Now, I mean, leading up to the event this year, we were already sort of getting our ballot systems ready and all that sort of stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah, last Sunday of August is our permanent date now, which is good.
nice.
So people can plan around that.
Yeah,
And it's a nice spread now with the Abbott World Majors races sort of moving us away from, Berlin permanently
sure.
a bit earlier, which is good. Gives a bit of clear air for tour operators and charities and,
Yeah,
and runners as well, and the Abbott World Marathon Majors family. So that's good. Yep. So we open our ballot on the 24th of September Sydney time, which is exciting.
yeah,
So very curious to see what impact this year's event
yeah.
will have on ballot demand. So waiting eagerly for that.
Yeah, of course. I know there was like a massive leap, yeah, like last year already. So it's going to be exciting to see. And what is the date that it's going to be next year? Is it the 30,
30th.
30th of August? Good stuff.
30 August. So 30 August is Marathon Day, and 29th will be the mini marathon, the 5K.
That's super exciting. I'm also pleased to see that actually this morning when I woke up, because I've already booked my hotel in Sydney for next year and a couple of weeks out. So I was sort of hoping that it was going to work out that day. So when I saw that, I thought
Yeah.
that's a relief. But yeah, it's good to know as well actually for anyone in the future that
Well,
it's going to be on that last Sunday. So that's really really helpful.
yeah. Very good planning because I think this year we had booked something like 13,000 rooms for the travel program alone. So,
Yeah.
um, hotel space will be at a premium next year for sure.
There you go. Well, I was sort of thought a little bit ahead. I'm coming out for a couple of weeks before, and I'm taking a little detour to New Zealand as well. So it's going to be a really nice trip.
Nice.
I'm super excited for it. So I really wanted to sort of start by getting into your journey first of all, and discuss like where running started for you. Could you maybe just sort of touch on that for me?
Yeah, I mean, running's been a part of my life since I was quite young. I,
Yeah.
I grew up out in Western Sydney, which is sort of a bit of a rough area. Played rugby league
Sure.
from 5 years old till about 14 years old,
Yeah.
and stayed quite little when the other kids started to get big, and broke a few bones in my last year of rugby league. But throughout the rugby league sort of journey, they had a bit of a partnership with the local athletics club. So we used to do swaps. In summer, we'd do little athletics, and winter was rugby league. But
Yeah.
that's how I was introduced to running
Sure.
um, and athletics. But just basically moved through the ranks through school, got into high school, and started to find a little bit of success in cross country running and middle distance running on the track, and
Yeah.
sort of just continued from there. I loved it.
Yeah.
Really great positive thing for me to do. When I could have been, doing not so positive things where I grew up, and it was a really good guide and rock for me moving through my life. So started then.
Yeah.
Ran in a few world cross country champs, won an Aussie champs, got a few placings on Aussie champs on the track and road and whatnot, and
Yeah.
sort of luckily, when I went down to Canberra when I finished year 12 in high school, I had a bit of a running scholarship at the Institute of Sport, and Did my university degree down there in sports science, and then first job out of uni was assistant race director of the City to Surf, which
Yeah.
is a really big 14-kilometre fun run in Sydney, and that was in 1993. So
Yeah.
started my career in event management all those years ago now. It seems not so long ago, but when you look at the date, it's quite a while. So I've been in it for a while.
Yeah, for sure. And we're actually going to get into a little bit more about that sort of journey as we go on. And
Mm.
sort of thinking as well, when you were growing up, maybe sort of in those early stages, coming out of that rugby league and starting to get into running, were there people around you that were supporting you? Were there maybe inspirations or mentors along the way?
Yeah, I think we had a really great running club actually. There's quite a number of Olympians who ran for our club, which was called Nepean Athletics Club,
Yeah,
and just really nice people, good down to earth, good Western Sydney boys and girls, and I think the thing that helped me the most was once I became a little bit better at running and got to travel a little bit around Australia, it sort of opened my eyes up to the opportunity that running might be able to provide to me if I applied myself and focused, which I wasn't very good at school, particularly, and sort of generally, I suppose. But I just think it opened my eyes to a world that I hadn't seen before, and it excited me and
yeah,
motivated me to get really focused on training and success, and doing what was required to get from where I was to where I wanted to be. But yeah, it was really great. And I think that just meeting those new people from different parts of Australia and other places just was the thing that sort of set my mind on a goal and a vision for my future self.
yeah,
Um, and lots of different people played a part. Like my own family, my grandfather in particular. When I was in year 11 and 12, I moved out of
yeah,
my family home in Western Sydney. In with him, who's a extremely strict sort of military style guy who just sort of really channeled my
yeah.
focus
Almost
really
what you
well,
needed,
which I
really.
needed.
Right? Yeah.
I really needed it. Um, and he gave me that discipline too, and that, he supported me a lot, as did the rest of my family, but my grandfather especially, supported me, really well and kept me on track. And then I sort of, once I got on track and started to get a bit more success with running, then you find your own groove and you have your own motivation, and you can do what's required to keep improving and whatnot. But
Yeah,
yeah, so family were the main sort of
sort of drive.
ones who sort of supported me and everything else, but with motivation from right around Australia,
Yeah.
New South Wales, Sydney, and elsewhere.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually to see the different sort of avenues that you've got that support from. And obviously, you've touched on just there, like around that year 10 period where you perhaps were getting into a little bit of trouble along the way and things were a bit tricky. That sort of resulted in you moving in with grandparents and going, into a different area, which is quite a big decision to make, like at that stage. Do you think there was like a particular moment where you sort of realised that maybe something had to change, and was there something that was maybe instrumental in you sort of turning those things around?
Yeah, I think that's when I was, look, it was at the end of year 10, which is your fourth year of high school here.
Sure.
I was about 15, 16 maybe. And, I was just where I was, who I was hanging out with. They were good fun and everything, but I knew where I wanted to be.
Hmm.
I knew where I was, and I knew I wouldn't get there if I stayed here.
Yeah.
So I had to pick myself up, remove myself so that I could focus on where I wanted to get to. Because it's hard, you've got a friend group, and it's a difficult thing for a young man or woman, or to lift themselves outside of their comfort zone,
Absolutely.
outside of their area where they've grown up, and into a new area where you don't know anybody at all,
Yeah.
and then sort of reset. But that's what I needed. I just needed a reset. I needed to be taken into a new environment where I could reset who I wanted to be and how I had to get there, and that's sort of that instigated the move from the family home to the grandparents' home,
Yeah.
and it worked. it worked perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, it did
It put
exactly
me in
what
a
they
really
needed.
nice environment at a school called Birrong Boys High School, which was very different to the school I had um, when I was, prior to that, where, clowning around and just being the class clown and having fun was the thing,
Sure.
to an environment where the boys were competitive at school and were competitive with each other on in terms of the marks they got at school, and that sort of ignited a bit of competitive spirit within myself, and
Sure.
meant that actually I need to study more. I need to catch up because I'm nowhere near as smart as these guys.
Yeah,
So that helped me a lot with picking up my schooling, and that sort of in parallel with my running picking up was a nice combination. So that was good. It was a good move. I think it was probably the smartest move I've ever made.
yeah, yeah,
Moving and doing that just to learn that you can be successful if you focus and have the right tools and
yeah.
the right people around you.
That's really interesting, I think, to to sort of go at that age and to sort of have that willpower and that determination, and actually then to look back at it and say that was the best decision I made. I think then probably has inspired you as you've continued going through your career to actually say these are the things I need to do. I need to perhaps step out of that comfort zone and put yourself in a
Mm.
situation where you are being challenged, and it's as you say, perhaps before you may be the sort of clown of the class or the standout person in that room, but actually you need to be in a room where you feel like you need to step up the game. And I think that's a really interesting thing that a lot of people do in when they're sort of trying to make that step up. Is that's what you see a lot of the time
Mm.
when people make that success. So as you said, from there you really began to excel at cross country, and this sort of continued into your years at Canberra University, and subsequently gaining a 10k personal best of 28 minutes 59.6 seconds. What was that time like for you when you started to reap the rewards of those decisions?
Yeah. I ran track. I did a couple of reasonable times on the track, but I didn't enjoy track. I think the ADHD in me just didn't like running around in circles much.
Sure.
I got bored running a 5k. A 10k was mind numbing for me,
Yeah.
but I could do it to a degree. That was reasonably fast. But I like being out in the open. I loved running cross country. I loved running road as well, because you got things to look at. You're not going around in circles. It's much more enjoyable. So I had far more success,
Yeah.
because I was able to focus better on those events than I was able to on the track. But I had a few decent results when I was young, but I was one of those runners who got a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
So you sort of, you naturally will get better as you get older, stronger, fitter, faster, and everything else.
Yeah.
But it'll get to a point where, you and your peers are going like that, and if you get an injury,
Mm.
they sort of keep going like that, and you got to try and catch up, and like that
Yeah.
sort of thing happens, which is a constant within my running career. But um, I think I have a theory that your body will let you do what it's able to do, right?
Sure.
And to be a really good marathon runner, for example, you got to be doing 200 kilometers plus week in, week out for fairly long periods of time to get that base and fitness, strength, and resilience, and everything else that you get from training like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I just couldn't string it together.
Sure.
I got a decent marathon out.
Yeah.
I finished one, and then after that, I got injured in every single build up to all of my other marathons,
Yeah.
and I could get a few good cross country races out, but you didn't need to do the volume that you do for marathon. But
Yeah.
no, it was good though. Like I mean, it fulfilled me in that I got to travel around the world. I got to race in world championships, wear the green and gold, and
Yeah.
meet great people, see the world, and have a great time doing it. And and that's sort of carried through. And luckily, it's sort of for me when we move on to career, the fact that I'm still working in the sport
Yeah.
that's sort of changed my life
Yeah.
is a fantastic sort of place to be from a career perspective.
Absolutely. And obviously, sort of during that period as well, as you touched on before, you began sort of working in event management, and you became the assistant race director to City to Surf in 1993. So was it exciting for you to be able to cross over like these two passions of obviously the running, but also this new sort of venture?
Yeah, it was. I mean, when I was at uni, I was sort of having to work some jobs to pay for it. So I was working for the Athletics Federation in Canberra. So I was doing a little bit of track event management there, which I really enjoyed. And I thought maybe there's a career in event management, and yeah, literally got that. That was my first job, and I was really lucky because at that time, the Fairfax event management team, who owned the City to Surf, they own the Sydney Morning Herald Half Marathon and a few other events. They were the biggest and best events in Australia
Yeah,
by a fair margin, and there was a really good team there. So to plop straight out of uni into probably the best event management team in the country with the biggest, most exciting events on their books was a pretty good place to start.
yeah,
So, um, but you had to learn a lot really quick because it's pretty high pace event management, and things were a lot different back then in terms of technology and various other you know things that we take for granted now in terms of event management sort of process and infrastructure and technology that you have to support you. It was sort of pretty analog. So,
yeah,
but that was good because you learnt from a grassroots perspective how to do things. I remember the first day I walked into the Fairfax events office, and the then operations director of operations, a guy called Ray Drury, is an old school fellow. I don't even remember how old he was, but he was substantially older than me, and he had out those paper maps of Sydney on his desk, and he had this long piece of string and then a ruler. And like I walk up to him and say, Ray, what are you doing? He's gone, I'm measuring the course, and he's got this little thing, and then he's putting it on a next to a ruler, trying to work out the distance of the Sydney Morning Herald Half Marathon. And I was just sort of shook my head and thought, Jesus, there's got to be a better way to do this. But
there's got to be a better
that
way.
was, we had paper, like 12 pages, paper entries that used to get mailed in, and there was about 15 sort of semi-retired women typing all of the details into the computers for the registration of runners within the system, and it was next level.
Yeah,
But it was good. It was good to understand how it was done back in the day
yeah, for sure.
compared to now.
Yeah, it's slightly different now. I feel like there might be a few lost race entries on those typewriters along the way or whatever, pop
Yeah,
them in. But it is really
exactly.
interesting to sort of see how it's gone from that to obviously now being able to, you know, see everything
Oh,
on the app and to track everything and to, and
yeah.
also just in general, I know we've spoken before about the sort of information that's been given out prior to like the marathon this year has been so helpful for so many. So yeah, a
Mm.
slight tweak for the from the maps. I don't think I'd fare very well if it came to looking at some maps. I'll be honest with you.
It's a substantially better participant experience now, from definitely from the time of entry until the time they get home. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And you sort of touched on there that in 1995 you ran your debut marathon on the Gold Coast, and you sort of said you did pretty well. You actually did it in 2 hours, 16 minutes and 4 seconds. So that's more than pretty good. That's a phenomenal time, and it actually put you in Olympic contention at the time. How did that feel for you, knowing that you were on that sort of precipice of perhaps going to an Olympics and doing that from there?
It felt good like that. I mean, I still remember that race. It was my first marathon. I had no idea what to expect
Mm,
because just I was leaping up from running 10Ks on the
yeah,
track and road, and I'd done a couple of half marathons at that point, but um, I didn't know what to expect.
yeah,
But I can tell you, I do remember for much of the race feeling like this is easy.
yeah,
This pace is easy. And I was looking around having a good old time until about 35K. I remember I missed my drink.
oh really?
And back then there weren't gels. It was like my coach then was a guy called Dick Telford,
Mm,
really prominent sports scientist in Australia. Coaches a bunch of athletes. Cameron Meyer now, and a bunch of Lisa Waitman, and a bunch of other um, really great athletes here still. But we'd pour our Gatorade into our water bottle and then water it down by a third, and that was our nutrition on the course. And there was no gels, there was nothing else. So you miss
yeah,
your weakened Gatorade on the course, and you're in a bit of
yeah.
trouble.
It's going to be a bit of a
So I
struggle
missed
for
that.
that last bit.
And sort of it wasn't until about 38, 39K I thought, oh, okay,
Hmm.
this is what the marathon is.
Yeah, That's
because
really interesting.
I was struggling.
Yeah,
I was struggling, and I got around the corner. Got around the corners at the Gold Coast Marathon, great Aussie marathon,
yeah,
um, and saw the clock tick over. Oh, it was I saw the clock in the distance, about 2:15 and 2:15 something, might have been 2:15 and a half, and I bolted,
yeah.
like went for it,
Sprint
and
finish.
just missed the 2:16, but that's okay. That was, I think at the time it was 4 seconds outside of the Olympic A standard,
Yeah,
though that wouldn't have got me in the team anyway because there was an Olympic trial that took place in Beppu in February of '96,
yeah,
which I did. I was running really well then, like way better than when I ran the 2:16.
sure.
Came through, like let the lead pack go, caught up to the back of them at halfway on a pretty quick pace. I think it was probably about a 2:12 pace or something like this,
Wow.
and then tore my calf, like literally 2K later, and that was it,
Ah,
done. That was the last marathon I lined up in. Oh,
wow.
no, sorry, I did do the Olympic trial in 2000
Hmm.
in Sydney. Same thing, tore my calf at 8K, and that was the end of it. But
Yeah,
that's
these.
the way it goes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is, isn't it? Those things do come along, and obviously, as you say, like that was obviously your first marathon where you've got that PB, and not being able to sort of do it again because of those injuries that have come along the way. And how did you feel? Obviously, training, getting to that point, knowing that you're perhaps getting to that 2:12 pace, and then picking up that injury, and then picking up subsequent injuries, and obviously the impact of that. Like, what support did you have around you? Like, who did you go to for support?
Oh, look, your coaches, you're always very close. All athletes are close to their coaches and their family. Then they've got a team around them, because you need a team to be successful. Whether you're an athlete or whether you're a marathon organizer, you need a great team.
Yeah,
Dick Telford was philosophical as he is. I was a bit upset at the time, but
yeah,
it took some years to get some perspective around that and realize,
mm,
as I said before, your body's going to let you do
yeah,
what it can do and nothing more,
mm,
and maybe sometimes a little bit less. But what you achieve is what you were meant to achieve, in my opinion,
yeah.
and, for whatever reason. But it took a while to get the perspective,
I was going to say
and the
that
maturity to
perspective is like
understand that.
is obviously something that takes time to get right, because I think that's so true what you're
Yeah,
saying. Like, there's definitely that potential that you have within, but like at the time,
yeah,
obviously you know what you're trying to do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, at the time too, I had full, I was a single father, and I had other
Yeah,
commitments that were more important to me. Um, and that's sort of when the focus probably shifted a little bit more towards career,
yeah,
and family for me, than being pretty self-centered, distance runner trying to achieve something. And you require that. I mean, that's a normal. You need to have that sort of focus if you want to compete at that level.
yeah,
So it was just sort of it was a phased sort of swing into
yeah,
a more normal life, around family and career, and um, still loved running, still do love it.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of how it went.
Yeah, and sort of seeing that journey from there, and as you say, getting that perspective, but also, as you sort of said there, going into a more normal life is actually quite extraordinary, like where it went from there, and obviously being able to still keep running at the forefront of many other things that you do, and also being able to run around the beautiful sort of scenery that you've got there right on your doorstep in Sydney. And obviously in 2000, the Olympics came to Sydney, and of course the marathon is a key event of the Olympics. It dates
Mm.
back to the very first games, but at that time Sydney didn't have a marathon at all, if I'm correct. What was your involvement then
It,
in sort of in that build up to the games?
it did have a marathon. There's been several Sydney marathons from the 70s right through
Sure.
until Sydney 2000. Actually, in 1993, when one Antonio Samaranch named Sydney as the winner of the 2000 Olympic Games, um, there was a sort of course designed for the Olympics, and
Mm,
the New South Wales Athletics Association and Athletics, or Australian Athletics, decided that there should be pre-Olympic marathon in Sydney on the course. So I actually did the first operations assessment of that course in 1993,
sure,
just before I started at Fairfax City to Surf. So that was my first involvement with the pre-Sydney Olympic Sydney Marathon. Went for the job as race director. I didn't get it. And I'm thankful for that, because I didn't have the experience. If I'd have gotten that job, I would have failed. I did not have the experience to do that role. So I'm glad I didn't get it. I was upset at the time, but so that started in the first pre-Olympic Sydney Marathon started in, I think it was probably 1994, I suppose. It went bankrupt. It went bankrupt after a couple of years. Then they brought it back with a different organizer. I stayed involved because the guy who had the second version of the pre-Olympic marathon was actually the guys who owned the Melbourne Marathon at the time. A guy called John Mallender. So I was involved in terms of on-ground commentary still then, leading up to it. And then I think it fell over again before the Olympics. And then they did the test event, which was in early 2000. And then the Olympics. The test event was the then biggest ever marathon held in Australia. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was pretty big numbers for Australia back then. It might have been 8,000 people or something like this. It might have been a little bit more even. And then after the Olympics, of course, Australian athletics went to the New South Wales government, and that's when the legacy event, the current TCS Sydney Marathon presented by ASICS, it was born out of the Olympics as a legacy, and it was gifted to the sport of athletics, who still own the rights, still own the event. Pont3, which is my company, which I started in 2005, we own the rights under license in perpetuity. Now we're a major. And we've been doing it since 2005. And I, during the Olympics, if I step back a little bit, I was then working for AMP, which was a financial services company who were one of the top sponsors of the Sydney 2000 Games and had the rights to the torch relay, and things like this. So I managed a couple of the really big sponsorship programs for AMP, with the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games, which was great. Gave me a different experience, around commercializing a sponsorship, how companies sort of activate different business divisions within a large sponsorship, and what's important in terms of leveraging a big investment in an event. So that was a really great different skill set that I learned, with AMP around, the Olympics, the biggest show on earth, really. And then after Sydney 2000, I was running sort of a bit of their global sponsorship stuff generally. Met some guys in India because we had a business AMP had a business in India, and we sponsored Steve Waugh in India and bought a whole bunch of perimeter signage over there to promote this new brand. So that's how I then met a company called Frontiers Group, who ended up having the rights to the Sydney Marathon from 2022 to 2024. And they asked the guy who was in charge of the billboards for Frontiers Group was actually in Sydney, because the marathon in Sydney wasn't going very well. And he asked me to come in and consult him, because he knew I was a runner. He knew I knew about sponsorship, and he knew I'd worked at event management, at Fairfax. So wrote them a strategy to, lift the Sydney Marathon, because it was on the verge of falling over, really. The New South Wales government wasn't happy with it. Australian athletics wasn't happy with it. So wrote that strategy. The deal was, if they wanted to use it, then I had to be retained, because I wanted to be involved with it, right? And anyway, that was all fine. Strategy was great. Everyone loved it, except things didn't work out between me and the rights holder. And in the end, I ended up with the rights to the event in 2005, which is when I started Pont3. With a big job on my hands to build and turn it around quickly.
Such a journey. I think that was the sort of thing as well, is looking at it, and as you say, it was sort of stumbling over from sort of 1970 all the way up to that period before that preliminary race, which is why I think I was thinking that it really wasn't happening at the time, because it was just so sort of juddery. And then actually to have the Olympics, to have that event, but then
Yeah.
also have the legacy event that sort of followed, as you say. But then it sort of struggled along the way. It was actually, you had that, and then it sort of was juddering along the way, and until in February 2005, you obviously took over the rights with Pont Free, and as you say, had to sort of turn it around. And obviously, as you said,
Mm.
you'd already sort of thought of a strategy. You'd already come into it with that. What inspired you to do that? Other than to do anywhere else or any other event, what inspired you to say this is the one I really want to focus on?
Look, I'd been around events, obviously, for a fair while. I knew running. I'd raced around the world. When I got asked to come and do a strategic review of the event in 2004, and I hadn't been near it since about 2000,
Yeah,
when I ran in the test event, or prior to 2000 when it was the pre-event. So I went and had a look at it. And, when I saw it in 2004, I thought, gee, this event really has something special.
yeah,
It's got something that no other event in Australia has.
mm-hmm.
And if managed properly, consistently, and given the right amount of love and care and direction and commitment, I knew then this event will be successful one day. There's no question about it. Like, it had the hallmark
It's got
ingredients
it.
of something truly special, like stuff you just can't create. You got the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I
Absolutely.
think two of the events were finishing at the Sydney Opera House. You had the Sydney Harbour. You had a bunch of iconic tourist landmarks that weren't being utilised properly. The marathon was, I think, still finishing out at Homebush. It wasn't being managed effectively, and therefore the impacts were too high for the amount of runners they were getting to close all those roads of the busiest city in Australia.
Yeah,
But I knew in 2004, one day this event will be great.
yeah,
Um, and that's why I was so passionate about it. I go, right, I have to be involved with this,
yeah,
because I can see this will be something special.
yeah. I completely see why you can think that, because I mean, Sydney Marathon, it makes sense that it's got to be one of the biggest players in the world, really, hasn't it? Like, it's always been the
Yeah,
case, and I'm going to sort of touch on that a little bit
yeah.
more actually later on. And as you say, it was struggling at that time, and am I correct in believing there was only about 1,300 people that were involved at that stage in
I
2005?
think I think it was like 1,280 marathon runners.
Yeah,
There was a half and a 10K. I think it was something like, it might have been about 7,000 people overall.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, for the
and
different.
the first thing I did, having worked at City to Surf, which is, well, at Fairfax at City to Surf, which is, it's the iconic running event. And it's still right up there. It's still a great event.
Yeah,
Um, having grown up with running and organising the City to Surf, which is 14 k's of torture, um, it is a tough course. There wasn't a place for young kids, or there were some mums with prams and dads with prams and whatnot doing it, but really it wasn't the place.
yeah,
It wasn't the sort of nurturing fields of you know joy that a kid would or should experience. So the first thing we did was add the family run, because
yeah,
what I wanted was, having grown up in running and experienced what running gave to me, I wanted to have an event that catered for the entire community, from cradle to grave.
yeah,
So, from the time you are in a pram as a baby, your mum or your dad can push you in a fun run. You can get a medal. You can have a positive, healthy family experience from the day you're born.
yeah,
That it might only be annual, right? But
sure.
it's something that they remember, because they do it every year and it's special, and kids love their medal, and then they grow out of the pram and they get to run across the little finish line and get their medal. And these memories are imprinted on their brains as really positive experiences that they've had since they were children. And
Yeah,
and and why that's important is that kids who do that with their families grow up knowing that going in a fun run is a normal, great, fun
Yeah,
thing to do, and I think that's a really positive thing for a kid to grow up with.
absolutely.
And it's something then when they have children, it's like, oh, we've got to do that.
Yeah,
Remember how awesome that
yeah,
was. And
the
that,
tradition.
that positive sort of impact and memory and stuff gets carried forward and builds communities. And it's really just a positive thing. So that's why we added the Family Fun Run in 2005 for that reason of having something for everyone.
Yeah,
But back then, people weren't running marathons
yeah,
like they are now. And in Australia, it was especially different because in Australia, the bucket list was a half or city to surf. That was the
wow.
running goal. And once you'd done that, right,
Yeah,
I've done it. That's it.
ticked off.
Whereas everywhere else in the world, as you know, the marathon
Yeah,
is the bucket list of
yeah,
running
yeah, it's the
performance
pinnacle.
or achievement or whatever. You need to finish a marathon. So there's just a totally different mindset here in Australia back then, right up until COVID
Yeah,
or after COVID, actually. Um,
that's
so it's very slow growth
yeah,
in the marathon for a long time.
that's really interesting. Sort of seeing how, obviously, bringing in those events, making it part of a sort of family's tradition, and then growing up with it, and actually saying these are the, and also be able to then see the marathon if they're involved in those other events. And I guess that's part of the reason why more people have got involved. But what other sort of things
Mm.
did you do to maybe build up the marathon? Obviously before
Yeah.
COVID, and then we'll maybe touch on where COVID sort of was a big turning point as well.
I mean, there was a few things we had to fix. We had to, at that time, because the numbers weren't so big, we had to try and minimise the impact a little bit.
Yeah,
We had to actually utilise the tourism assets that we had available to us,
yeah, of course.
which weren't being fully utilised. So, first thing, at the family run, at the same time, consolidate all finishes back to the Sydney Opera House,
Yeah,
iconic, landmark, finish line.
doesn't get much better than
Um,
that finish, does
we
it?
needed we needed to work with government instead of like the footprint it had before was way too big for the number of runners that were taking part in the event.
Sure.
So to try and consolidate the course a bit so that it was embraced a bit more. It was easier to get things done whilst we were building it, right?
Yeah,
So building a relationship with government agencies and landowners and delivering the event professionally, you know, as per the plans that we produce, delivering those perfectly
yeah,
and gaining the trust of government and building that relationship so that we could work together. And it wasn't that they didn't support it; they did support it. But when you've got 1,200 people on a marathon that's going for 6 hours and there's people waiting in their cars and they can see one person and it's like, where's the next marathon runner? That doesn't look too good, right?
sure.
It's not the case
Yeah,
now, of course, but we had to work with the government and build it and bide our time and prove ourselves. And
yeah,
as we got bigger, the support grew and we could stretch things out a little bit.
yeah,
It's totally different now. Of course, we're an Abbott World Marathon major, but these are key things that we did. Made it into a real tourist marathon, a marathon experience.
yeah.
Sydney was never ever about speed, and we all know that because if anyone's been to Sydney, they'll know it's a very
It's
hilly
quite
city.
heavy.
But it's not about that like New York City. It's about the experience, or London. It's about the experience,
Absolutely.
and just running through a city and enjoying it. So
Yeah,
just years of just consolidation of building our experience, of building the numbers slowly, of building commercial interest and getting more investment so we can do more things and stuff like that. But, you know, whilst in 2004 I knew it would be super successul, I actually thought it would be super successful a lot earlier than what it was. So it was a lot of hard work. I think
yeah,
it took us 18 years to grow up from 1,280 odd runners to 5,300,
yeah,
and then 3 years to grow it to what it was this year was the 34,000.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, you've got to be patient. It is a marathon. Organising a marathon is a marathon,
It's a
and
marathon.
you need patience to run a marathon. So in on both sides of the fence.
Absolutely. And as you sort of touched on as well, obviously that period after COVID indicated a big sort of turnaround. Why do you think that was? What was that sort of impetus at that time?
Look, I think I mean the turnaround, I think, was sort of a bit of a twofold thing in terms of turnaround in participation in the event.
Yeah.
Firstly, Australians are very competitive. They like to be up there with the best. There's a lot of Aussie spirit and pride. And, when we signed the candidacy agreement, there was a lot of excitement in the traditional Australian running community. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, you've got an opportunity to have the Abbott World Marathon Majors in Sydney. Um, there were a lot of runners then. Don't get me wrong. There were a lot of runners.
Yeah.
Like the majors in Melbourne, Sydney, and Gold Coast. We were getting between 12 and 16,000 people in our half marathons.
Wow.
So there were enough runners
Yeah.
if they all switched.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they all switched to the marathon. And we had to triple our finisher numbers from the day we signed our candidacy agreement to be able to meet that criteria point, and that was one that we thought would be difficult. However, we had a lot of fun with our marketing. Like, our marketing team sort of tapped into that Aussie spirit. It's getting in the macho sort of
Get into that
mindset of
zone.
Aussies, and it's like, well, yeah, why are you doing a half? What do you don't do a half of anything. You got to do the marathon. Come on, step up. Let's
Yeah.
make Sydney a major like this. Bring them on the journey. It's like they've got a role to play in making Sydney a major. So that was one half,
Sure.
the traditional running audience. But then you had the post-COVID, new running boom, right? So
Yeah.
obviously the people who took up running during COVID couldn't go to the gym, stuck at home. It's like, I've got to do something, started running and whatever. And then, fell in love with it, found they could do it when they wouldn't have even thought of it before COVID because they were used to doing what they were doing. And then the plethora of run clubs that catered for them in a really unique and different way to how traditional run clubs catered to, their audiences, and,
Yeah.
much more focused on, because they were all a lot younger, right?
Yeah.
On social activities, on fun, on connections, on, just making it a normal part of their life that's fun and fulfilled a number of areas that people need fulfilled, that being connections and, social and fitness and wellness and mental health and everything. And they did a great job at that. And all of those runners, and there was a lot of them,
Yeah.
there's no preconceptions. It's not City to Surf is the bucket list or a half. It was like, oh, let's make Sydney a major. We're running the marathon,
Yeah.
right? So then add that to the new to the old, and you saw the sort of growth that we experienced.
Yeah.
And it ended up being one of the easiest criteria points that we had to meet in the end, which was surprising. I thought we'd get there, but I thought it would be a lot harder than what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a really valid point. And as you sort of touching on there, last November, Sydney was awarded the Abbott World Marathon Major status, and this is obviously a huge accomplishment. Could you talk us through like some of the things that were required to meet those entry requirements?
I look. I can speak in general.
Yeah.
They're sort of quite confidential. So I
Of
mean,
course.
the areas that were of significant importance to us were fundamental changes to the course. Remembering when we signed the agreement, we were looking after 5,000 people on the
Yeah.
marathon route with a minimal footprint to still have as least impact on the community as possible. So there are a lot of sort of out and backs to get distance and stuff like that, narrow sections of the course, 180-degree turns and things like this. Our venue requirements were so much less
Yeah.
with that number of people, than what was going to be required. So that, like, probably the second biggest challenge we thought we would have was, how can we change this marathon course to cater for 30, 40, 50,000 runners?
Yeah.
And normally that would be a really tough thing to do, to be able to do what we've done and just stretch the course right out,
Yeah.
and basically go from one side of Sydney all the way down to the other side, and you're basically cutting a line through the city, and I mean, we've got tunnels, of course, and stuff like that, so you can get under it. But getting those sorts of fundamental and big impactful changes through a government normally would be really difficult, except for the fact that the New South Wales government were our biggest supporter.
Yeah.
Other than our commercial partners, the New South Wales government and the tourism arm called Destination New South Wales,
Yeah.
they were fully invested in bringing the Abbott World Marathon Majors to Sydney. And as a result of that, all of the government agencies were also heavily invested in the success of the candidacy,
Yeah.
and making sure we met the criteria. So we had to change the course.
Yeah.
We had to move the start venue back to the original Olympic start area in North Sydney. I think the start venue we had even in our first year of candidacy was 20,000 square metres. There was one
Yeah.
train station for access. The next year we moved it to North Sydney Oval, which was at 110,000 square metres with 3 train stations
Yeah.
close by. So capacity was increased substantially. Access was made 10 times easier.
Yeah.
And then we changed the course each year to what it is now, which is about as good as it gets in Sydney. You won't get a better course
Yeah.
than what we have now. If we turn in any direction off where we are now, we'll hit a hill,
Yeah.
or at an out and back. So it's as good as it's going to get in Sydney in terms of flow. It does flow well now. It's got good capacity. It's got good width. There's minimal out and backs. There's still hills, but there's also some sort of semi-flat sections.
Yeah.
And now, with the extended footprint in the southern part of the course, you're going into more residential areas, so you're getting more people out on the streets, instead of doing 10 kilometres within a parkland where no one lives, and it's quiet as a mouse. But
Yeah.
so those sort of two areas were probably the biggest, most fundamental changes that we had to make that should have been difficult, but
Yeah.
ended up being a lot easier than we thought it would be. But those were the two most critical things that we had to get right.
Yeah.
And then obviously building the numbers, which I've already spoken about, and then building community engagement outside of the running community was a big thing too. So
Of course.
we made decent inroads during candidacy, but this year we took a big leap,
Yeah.
which was great.
Yeah, massively. And as you say, being able to actually bring it back to that Olympic start as well is actually makes it even more special, I think, being able to sort of run
Yeah,
through that as a runner. It makes it pretty incredible. And obviously that route that's going across the Harbour Bridge,
yeah,
through the different areas of Sydney that you get to see. And it's such a beautiful course
yeah,
as well. And I was sort of watching the other day and looking forward to being out there. It really is an amazing course. And obviously to then end back at the Sydney Opera House is phenomenal. So
yeah.
it's super exciting. As you say, also, it has got a bit faster. I know a couple of friends who actually got lifetime PBs last week, and some of
Did
them
they?
it's like their 30 odd marathon. This was like their 34th marathon, I think, one of my
Yeah,
friends. So yeah, it's
yeah. Right.
doable. Like,
It's look. Some people look at an elevation profile, or they'll look at the total cumulative elevation and go, "No, it's the toughest out of all of them." But they don't take the time to actually look at the gradient and things like this. Right now, you can actually run most of the hills in Sydney pretty well.
yeah,
You can keep a rhythm up
yeah, if you keep the
on the
pace,
hills at the TCS Sydney Marathon. If you get on a lot of hills that are steeper, you lose all rhythm,
yeah,
you lose all flow and stuff like that. That's not the case in Sydney. You can, if you've done a bit of hill training, you can keep a decent rhythm
yeah,
in the Sydney Marathon. And I've heard that a lot. Like
yeah,
so many people, oh no, it's just so hard. It's not. Well, it's hilly on paper, but they're hills that you can run if you do the right training.
yeah,
And you've got to prepare for any course you've got, and not all courses are flat, and you shouldn't be, in my opinion, you should be doing marathons around the world for different experiences, not just
I
collecting
completely agree.
PBs or trying to collect PBs, because you're going to be disappointed if that's your approach.
Yeah, yeah. No, I completely agree. I think there's different races with different things as well. And I know for me personally, when it comes to the Abbott World Marathon Majors, it's all about the experience. I mean, all the different things you do around it, the shakeouts, the events. Obviously, we
Yeah,
met in Tokyo earlier in the year at an event with Abbott, and sort of doing all those different things makes them so special to me. Like, I'm going to be going to Valencia in a couple of months, or shortly after this episode probably
Nice.
goes out. And that's probably somewhere you might think of doing that. But
Yeah.
when I hopefully go to Boston, and London and Sydney next year, those are going to be for fun. Obviously, London is where I live, so
Yeah.
it's just down the road. But
Yeah.
it's going to be nice to go back to it, hopefully, as a sort of first memory, because that was my first marathon actually. So yeah, all of them have different
Nice.
meanings and different things that you have, and
Yeah.
obviously to go from 1,300 runners to this year having nearly 35,000 runners, and obviously the continual growth that I'm sure that you're looking to do, and then obviously looking at the fact that you've brought in people like Kipchoge and Hassan who ran this year and had an incredible race as well, like all of those things must make it feel incredibly special to make it as a major in this first year. Like that must feel incredibly empowering to you, and having that belief from 2004 to now.
Yeah. It was very rewarding. I mean, we got a great team too. Like this, the staff's grown from, I think we had 12 people when we signed candidacy. We're at about 37 now. So we actually have, a really capable team at Pont 3 to be able to deliver what we did deliver, because we delivered a lot more
Yeah,
than ever before. And, we wanted our first year to have impact and be memorable, and to make a statement that Sydney's here.
yeah,
We're an Abbott World Major now, and this is who we are. But we wanted to do it with meaning and with our own personality too.
yeah,
And we did a few things a little bit different that hadn't been done before. And I've said this many times. When we are thinking, when the team's thinking about what we want to do this year or next year or whatever, we're thinking about the participant, right? And we're thinking about what's going to give them the best experience. And when we say that, we don't mean on this from the start line to the finish line. We mean from when they get off the plane to when they get back on the plane, right?
yeah,
And I have a goal, and I've stated this. I'm not even sure this is a word, but we want the TCS Sydney Marathon to be the funnest Abbott World Marathon major,
yeah.
and we're pretty committed to that. And that is a reflection of the Australian personality,
I've heard it going
which is
around.
good.
I've heard lots of people telling me it. To be fair, so I think you're doing a good job with it.
Yeah, so that we did the Meet the Stars event on the Friday night.
Yeah,
Look, so if I step back a little bit, to Kipchoge and Sifan, a very intentional recruitment of those two athletes to make that statement, and first and foremost is what we knew is as soon as they stepped off the plane, the media would be all over
of
them,
course.
and it would be on every single news channel, morning, lunch, and dinner the whole week, which it was, every channel.
Yeah,
So everyone in Australia, and especially everyone in Sydney, knew the two greatest marathon runners of all time are in Sydney this weekend, running through the streets of Sydney. Let's go and watch.
yeah,
Take the kids. Let's see these amazing athletes come out. And I knew by doing that, if we get them out once and they bring their children out, or just come out themselves with their friends and experience the marathon and the emotion, and be inspired, or the kids are inspired, and whatever else, I knew, or I know, or that will just grow year on year on year, because I want to come back every year. So that was the first part, and the purpose of bringing them, moving back onto doing something different and unique. The Meet the Stars thing on the Friday night. We had we had 50, 60,000 people in Sydney who were runners, probably sorry 50,000 runners in Sydney
yeah,
that week, who had a couple of people with them, and they're here for the marathon. Everyone's walking around. The city was a buzz. It reminded me of the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games, the buzz that was in Sydney. We haven't seen anything like it in Sydney since the Sydney 2000 Games. So the city was a buzz. What we wanted to do is not just hand them their bib at Expo, let them walk through and say see you on Sunday. We wanted to give them an event that was an official event,
yeah,
that was in an iconic location, that they could come to, that was free, and that they could sort of be entertained. be excited, be in an iconic location, and create memories. And the other thing we wanted to do was bring the super elite athletes like Kipchoge and Sifan and all of the others, Hug and Scaroni, the wheelchair athletes, and all of the elite people. We wanted to introduce them to our audience in a beautiful environment so they could get to know them as people and realize they are just like any other runner. Like they're normal people. They have their own fears. They get nervous before a race. They think through very similar things to what your recreational runners do, and bring out their personality so that they could connect with them better, as opposed to just seeing them running world records on TV or something in a magazine. Let them get to know them and have a connection with them, and then create memories that they wouldn't have had before. The fireworks over the top of the Opera House. It was just a great show to kick off the weekend. That was free and it was official. I got out of the car and I knew it would be popular. I got out of the car at the sort of end of the finish straight, and I saw the crowds along the finish shoot, and I thought, perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. And then when I walked a bit further to the actual finish gantry and saw the steps of the Opera House with the sails, it was full, like absolutely packed. And I thought, wow, this is cool. So that was nice. It was nice to do something a little bit different. It was nice to give the visitors something special to remember and let them get to know the elites. And the elites loved it. They thought it was awesome. Like they really enjoyed it. They'd never done it before like that. Government loved it. It showcased the Opera House and demonstrated how big the TCS Sydney Marathon is now through the news. Again, the politicians were involved, and that's always good to feature politicians in public space like that. So that was a really good start to the week, an opener, sort of an opening ceremony, if you want to call it that. And then the first Saturday, first time we've had a Saturday event, so a 2-day event, 5K. Having set up the finish line earlier, because they used to run after the marathon on the Sunday and have a different finish line. So they got to experience the Opera House finish line for the first time in a lot of years, which was great. And that was popular. And then onto race day, and race day was it was amazing. Like really perfect Sydney weather, cool. I think it was like 8 to 18 or 8 to 19 degrees Celsius. Blue, sunny skies, no wind. The streets were lined with people, which we've never seen before. Like an amazing uplift in spectator numbers, which is what we wanted, because that still right now, other than the finisher numbers, which we will grow and get to the vicinity of the others, as over the next few years. But the biggest difference being the crowd support that the other Abbott World Marathon majors have, like especially New York and London, and Chicago. So trying to build that, and that strategy of having Sifan and Kipchoge and the great marketing we did and whatnot around it actually work, which is great. So it all went as planned, which was nice, and it was just a really great weekend. And we've been not surprised, because we knew people would fall in love with Sydney and Sydney ciders and have a great time and enjoy, and there are a lot of great restaurants, pubs, food, coffee, and things in Sydney. We knew, and the people are so friendly, right? They always want to have a chat. Aussies love a chat. We knew people would have a great time. We knew we'd put on a good show, and for it to come together so well, as it did, and see the reactions through social media and on the ground of people and how happy they were and what a great time they've had. It couldn't have been a more perfect start on our journey as the 7th Abbott World Marathon Major. So we're very excited, looking forward at the trajectory and how we lift each year, because we set the bar pretty high this year. It's like, oh crap, maybe we should have set the bar a little bit lower so we could go do it slowly, sort of like a high jumper, break the world record a little bit at a time each year. But we've gone to the top, and now we've got to work out how we go even higher next year, which is we will, but it was just a great first year, which the whole team were so proud of delivering, and I'm so proud of the Pont 3 team for what they did, and all of the government agencies, because as I said, it's not just Pont 3 team. There's hundreds of government, dedicated government, employees who work really closely with us to make it happen, and everyone was happy.
Yeah.
Everyone was really happy with how things went. So we're looking forward. There's obviously always things you can improve.
Yeah.
And these things come out through debrief, through observations on event day and things like that. So there's stuff to do. We're already working on next year.
Yeah.
But we're really excited of what we're going to deliver next year.
Yeah, so am I. So am I. As you say, you've absolutely smashed it this year, and you can't not be happy with how it went because it was just phenomenal. And actually, to also touching there on some of the things you might look to do in the future, thinking about how you can further increase the field, also increase the spectators, which I know is just leapt up, as you say, in the last couple of years. So it's only going to continue to grow with those things in place. So that's super exciting as well. And I know there's been some of the initiatives that you've put in place as well, not just around the race weekend, but also about inspiring the next generation of like Australian runners with the different Sydney Marathon run clubs that you've got going on around the country as well, and those different things. And I know that's really important to you too, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. We started our foundation this year, We Run Foundation, and the purpose of that is to invest in community and build community capability and bring running to communities that would not otherwise experience running, and providing with that, with that access to be able to enjoy the great benefits of running, and supporting them, with our expertise, coaching, accreditation and things like this. So that definitely it's a big focus for us.
Yeah.
Community and building those bonds. It's so important.
Yeah, definitely. And as I sort of mentioned as well, I'll be running in 2026, which I'm beyond excited about. And to be honest with you, I've always said to people when I did London when I was 18, I said I want to run London, I want to run New York, and I want to run Sydney. And at that point, I didn't know anything about the majors, if I'm honest with you. I didn't really have a lot to do with running. It was like my first one. It was first sort of straight into it. So to have it now as a majors is going to be amazing. And what do you think is, well, as I say, that would be my 7th, so that would be even more special. And what do you think for perhaps people like me, what do you want us to take away from the experience, other than obviously it being the funnest major out there?
I mean, that's it. I just want people to come down, enjoy a really well organised event, and meet some friendly Aussies and have a good time and see some beautiful sights, and take home happy memories and tell people about it, and feel healthy and well about the experience, and to keep doing it. I mean, it's pretty simple, really, and have fun. Yeah, of course. Let's just look, Sydney, Australia, the people they're just nice places and people, and, put a beautiful marathon in the mix as part of an Abbott World Marathon Majors series, and it's the perfect reason to come to Sydney. But look, we have consistently heard positive feedback about the city, about the food, about the race, about the people, about the environment, about the things that people have done, like so many photos of all the little attractions that people went to, almost as many as race photos and stuff like that. But look, people have a good time here. So half of them will probably want to stay, but that's it. Just we
Come and
do our
enjoy.
job, deliver a great event, provide some great experiences to people, and let them enjoy the natural beauty and people that are here.
Absolutely. And that actually brings me to my final question. And this is the question that we ask everyone who comes on the podcast. And for you in particular, what would you say to someone who is perhaps looking at running their first ever marathon in Sydney, but says to you, I could never do that. I can't even run for the bus.
Anyone can finish a marathon, right? Anyone, if you want to. You just got to believe in yourself. But I think the most important thing to do is to have a running buddy.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. Do it with someone. Find your reason, like why. What's your purpose? What's going to drive you, and who's going to help drive you, right? So, what's your purpose? What's your reason? What's your goal? That's the why,
Yeah.
and the how is in my opinion, the how is getting a running buddy or a number of running buddies, because they keep you motivated because you'll go through ups and downs on any journey.
Yeah.
And when you're doing it with someone else, you've got that support, right? So find your purpose, why, let that drive you, but then have that support with you. But anyone can do a marathon if you want to.
I love that. That's so great. Thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Wayne. And I look forward to seeing you in Sydney next year, if not before.
Yeah, great. That's a great interview. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to seeing you next year.
Our Deliriously Mad Challenger, supported by Runna, Fiona Forward, has dropped us a quick message to let us know how she's getting on in training.
Hi Ben, quick update for you. We are back up and running. The knee's feeling good. Done a bunch of 5Ks now and no knee pain whatsoever. So I'm super excited. We finally booked a race. I'm going to do a 10K next year. I'm super excited to carry on training. Speak soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Running for the Bus, presented by BKDMC. Thank you to our guest today, Wayne Larden, our Deliriously Mad Challenger, Fiona Forward, Runner, and the podcast rooms for their support. You can get 2 weeks free runner coaching using the code BKDMC. Head to the Ben Kelleher DMC Insta now to find the Tread playlist, the Rookie Runners training plan, information on how you can become a Deliriously Mad Challenger, and lots more. If you've enjoyed the show, well, what are you waiting for? Hit follow and you'll be notified every time a new episode drops. We'd also love to hear from you, so do drop us a message or leave a review. See you next time on Running for the Bus, where you can listen and watch on the run, on the bus, or whilst you're running for it.